I think with such low self-esteem about myself, my Blackness, being poor, no guidance, no adults around, it was so easy to just fall for anything or anyone who was going to say, you matter. I was 21 when I started drinking, and then by that November, I had done cocaine for the first time. To be in a place where you just want to be anything to be liked. I genuinely do not know how I'm alive. Oh no, now I'm gonna cry. You are worthy of your sobriety. And we're done here. I thanked both drugs and alcohol for saving my life, for getting me through this, for holding my hand when no one else could. We've parked it. That's done. Being like the best version of myself, the life that I'm living is like very dope. Weird to be that young and feel like I was already living my dreams. And then they just like propulse. I'm Hilary LeBlanc, a Black, Acadian, queer, Senegalese, female-identifying person, daughter, who works in the fashion industry and in journalism and in the activism space, who is also a cat mom and a girlfriend, and who does too many things. My childhood, to have lived in it, I would have never said that it was anything bad, but like hindsight is 2020. And when I look at it now, it was very traumatizing from the start. My mom, who I love and have a good relationship with, I feel like I always need to stipulate that, was an alcoholic, and I just didn't really know that. At the time, I sort of thought what I was living was normal. I was raised by her basically alone. I have godparents, but my dad was not really present. My mom is also white and went into labor on her 43rd birthday. So like older and white, and we were in a white community, so I'm from Moncton, New Brunswick, and there were not a lot of Black people around, and since I didn't really have a relationship with my Black dad, it was really hard to have a good sense of like identity and a sense of self. My mom tried to prepare me for like all of the racism that I would face by telling me, probably at way too young of an age, that at the age of 2, I had been called like an N-word baby by people in a mall. And she told me that to like obviously warn me that like people are just you were a baby and people are just going to see you as this, as your skin tone. I think she really tried to harden me with that, but that also says a lot about my mom's character, where I feel like she told me way too much at a young age. We were best friends from the start, and she was very much like a sheltering helicopter mom. We were on welfare, so that was also really hard, not having a lot of money on top of her having an addiction. So like she would prioritize me, and then she would prioritize her addiction. And then she would complain about not having money and blame it on my father not paying child support, and not the fact that she was smoking or drinking. Like I did get to see my dad probably for a week out of the year, from the ages of 5 to I think like 16. My mom ended up losing the ability to walk at the end of my 3rd year or 2nd year of university. She was in the hospital for 80 days. They never really figured out what it was. They released her into my care. So I am 20. I am working a part-time job. I'm in university, and now I have a wheelchair-bound mom in a non-wheelchair accessible apartment. I had to fight with the government to find one accessible that they would subsidize. And a month after that, I met the person who steamrolled me into addiction, essentially. So it was that quickly after my mom getting sick that I met sort of the catalyst of, not the person I'm going to blame my problems on, but the person who like introduced me to substances and to alcohol. And so I was 21 when I started drinking, and it was solely to basically follow him bar to bar and be like a puppy and be like, I want you to like me, so I'm going to change all of my traits to be likable, which is something that I was doing in terms of my Blackness as well. And then by that November, I had done cocaine for the first time because of this person. And then from there, it was just 3 years of being completely in an addiction mess. But the whole root cause of doing all of that was because I had no one else. Like my friends were watching, but like they had been drinking and they had permission from their parents. So they were sort of like, oh, Hilary's finally catching up to us. And then I made friends with people as I was trying to follow around this guy. And then I thought that that was what friends were. They were not reliable people. I would never have called on them if I was moving, if I had a problem, or if I was my mom had an issue, but they were there every single night. And I maintain the sentence that like misery loves company. And I think that that is what a bar, like a regular bar crowd is. I have friends who have moved away from there who are here now, who remember being there, like, oh, I was there the first time you did a line and this and that. And it's like, but to think that like we've both gotten out of it, but we were all there for that same sense of like community and trying to find something to make us feel better. And I think with such low self-esteem about myself, my Blackness, being poor, no guidance, no adults around, it was so easy to just fall for anything or anyone who was going to say you matter or you're interesting. And I think especially as a woman and as a mixed race woman in a white community, it was very easy to be like, oh, you're exotic, here's a shot, and want to take it because I'm finally special in a community that never saw me as special, when really I was like devaluing myself over and over every single time. What ended up happening is the more that I drank, and I don't want to say the words like welcomed more problems, because I'm not ever the reason that I experienced necessarily any of these traumas. But obviously there's something to be said about you might be more likely to experience rape and sexual assault if you're inebriated and can't maybe fully defend yourself. With those things happening, it became to me like I need to do coke to try to feel more sober so I don't black out, so I don't re-experience these atrocities. So then it just became out of fear. And I really just never wanted to go home. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. Truthfully, I wanted to just continue to party as long as I could, because if I was alone, I was just waiting for the next time I could go and do these things again. And I would do like 2-day benders, 3-day benders, until I was basically like throwing up. At some points, like just like green bile because there was no food left in me. Like I genuinely do not know how I'm alive, sincerely, because I was like hell bent on like the party must go on forever. At the end of 2017, around this guy who I was following around's birthday, he ended up physically assaulting me. Over the course of a month, once I had indicated I was going to move to Toronto, he became like super physically abusive, threatening my life, hitting me, a lot of stuff. And after that, things really shifted because I was no longer getting it like for free. So I was now willingly paying to continue to use a substance to numb a trauma given to me by the person who started me on those substances. So it just became like I was now hanging out with anyone and anyone, anywhere who would give it to me, because I didn't want to have to pay for it, because I had lost this person while also dealing with like these bruises. The fact that everyone in town, in our community of drunk people, knew that this was going on. And so that was, I think, one of the more embarrassing and like maybe the first of several rock bottoms. I thought obviously moving to Toronto would make me sober up, because in my mind it was like, well, you're not going to know these people selling it to you. That has to be so much more scarier. And at that time, I think the language around fentanyl had really started to pick up, and that was a much bigger concern. And then still, I sort of like went to my local bar around like Sherbourne Bloor area and connected with people there. And then the next thing you know, I was doing the same thing. So that's sort of how it went for the like 2 years that I was here before I then made the next big life change and like lived with my dad. Like, in all honesty, this is probably what you need. Like all of this lack of identity and community and self, not to use a lack of a better word, probably stem from daddy issues, and just the fact that you never felt like you belonged to that side of your family, to your dad, to this person at all. And so I ended up saying yes. I ended up sacrificing living with my cat for that amount of time, because he was like, you're not bringing your cat. So I gave my cat to friends, bawled my eyes out, packed all my stuff, and moved to Ottawa. By February, we were talking about COVID, and then March, everything locked down. Then I was stuck in that house, and I was stuck sober for years. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me, honestly. But at the time, I was like, yo, I hate this. I hate this. It was great. Obviously, living with my dad opened me up to like learning about like what Senegalese culture was like. So first of all, I got to like actually bond with my dad and like show him like Kanye West music videos and Tiana Taylor music videos till like 3 a.m. and just like hang out with my dad. And that was just like genuinely nice. Worked with a black Congolese girl who happened to live 2 streets over, who then she started braiding my hair. Never had box braids before. And it was like this new expression and version of myself. And then my aunts were telling me how to like maintain it and how to keep it. And it just became like learning about myself and finding a new identity and like curating a new version of myself alive in terms of my Blackness, coupled with the new person I was becoming through therapy and addiction stuff, just created this like super bomb of goodness of like, well, now like I got new hair and she can't be drunk at the club. I've got like extensions. Like it was just like I had this persona, but it was who I always wanted to be. I just never had the chance to become who I wanted to be. Like someone else was telling me who to be all the time. And so it just worked out that way. That was the last time I've touched anything, was March 5th. And I'm very proud of myself. You are worthy of your sobriety, and go have a good time. I love the trick of playing the tape forward and remembering like you do like 7 jobs. You can't be hungover. And now that you're almost 30, you can't be hungover for 2 days. It will cost you money, clients, respect, energy, your dignity. You don't need to be soaking in shame for a week after that. You don't need to have people checking up on you. Like all of that negativity is just absolutely not worth it. And the most recent thing was this realization that like I was doing it most recently to be appealing and attractive to men and to be interesting in a bar. And I, for some reason, like this language is like a little harsh, but I just realized that like if I do that, all of the people who've sexually assaulted me sort of win. I am making myself smaller for men and sometimes even women because I am pansexual, but like more typically men because I think I'm still intimidated sometimes because of my trauma. And that just means that my traumatizers win. But the why most recently definitely was more so about like self-esteem in terms of interpersonal relationships, fitting what I think is a societal standard. And then we all challenge that societal standard. And now I'm just like, you get me how you get me or you don't get me at all. That's it. I also think that cocaine specifically allows you to do so much more risky behavior. I think that like drinking, it'll get you to a point where you're blackout and you do a couple of dumb things and eventually you will throw up. It will sort of make you stop. Coke makes you feel limitless. It makes you feel invincible in such a scary way that you just don't think anything is ever going to be a problem or happen to you. And I like, when I look back on so many of the dumb things that I've done, again, I wonder how I'm alive. I wonder how I didn't get caught. I wonder how, like, there's just so many questions, and I'm so thankful every day that I'm here. Everyone just deserves euphoria, and it's just about how you get it. And whether I was getting euphoria from like drinking or doing a line or hanging with people or now getting to participate in interviews or be the interviewer, I was a human who deserved happiness. If you see someone on the street or in the Toronto streetcar living what might not be their best life, they're just trying to find joy and be a human being in whatever is accessible to them. And so I will always have infinite empathy and compassion. And I really think it's like these lived experiences is what's made me like have the career mindset that I have. No, now I'm gonna cry. I think the thing that I always want to like try to say to like my inner child is that you're worthy of joy and of happiness. I wish I could tell myself that I was okay, that I was enough, that I was safe, because I felt unsafe a lot of the times. And I think looking back at it now, at least I know I was safe because I lived to tell the tale. And I guess I would just say to myself, like, you don't have to do the things that you don't want to do. You don't have to make yourself smaller to fit into these spaces. I think from like a female perspective, a Black perspective, a queer perspective, all of them intertwined, we're always just trying to fit into these boxes. Whether the boxes are labels that are given to us by society or they're labels we're giving ourselves, it's like we're always trying to be what someone wants us to be. And I wish I could have just told myself, like, live your Black girl truth, girl. Like in terms of like, in terms of like what I'm doing to be my most actualized self, I think is just like, when you're sober, there's just like nowhere to hide anymore. And so I'm constantly like affirming myself, journaling, actively checking in with myself. I think all of those things really attribute to being like the best version of myself. I think the coolest things that I'm doing right now, like everything that I listed in terms of the life that I'm living is like very dope. It's really weird. I said it at 25 or 26 that it was weird to be that young and feel like I was already living my dreams, and then they just like propulsed once I got sober. And now like we joke around, me and my friends, that like we don't know what I'm gonna manifest next, so that I need to calm down because it just keeps getting crazier and crazier by the second. I'd say that like being able to own my own Black podcasting company and stay in touch with the Black community there and still evoke change there has been like super important. I think that all the sobriety stuff aside, the amount of like racism and issues that are going on in the East Coast that like people don't talk about, and the fact that people don't talk about racism in Canada is like crucial to my personal story. I tried to do research around like, are there Black AA meetings? What does Black sobriety support look like in the East Coast? What does it look like in Canada? I can't really find a lot. There's a Black Sober Girls Club in the States that's doing a lot of work. I can't find anything about that here, but I wouldn't be surprised if that lack of community, if coming from away, being a refugee, being an immigrant wouldn't contribute to maybe drinking in those communities. And so for me, it's important to share my story from a Black perspective as well, because I want people to know that like you can be a Black alcoholic in New Brunswick and get out of that mindset, because it is such a narrative there to drink. So for me, that community is how I stay tapped into like my Black East Coast side, by like getting to interview people who are like one of the only Black daycares, the only Black person to win a Music New Brunswick award, people who are involved in their church, like so many amazing people out there. So I just wanted to like add that like that's also a very crucial part of my community to me, that like had I not first been vulnerable and been on an initial podcast that then I no longer work with and founded my own, I don't know how I would have stayed tapped into my Blackness in that respect to then be able to work on my Blackness here and have that continue. So if it wouldn't have started with my dad, none of this would have happened. And now I'm tapped into like Black communities from Ontario all the way to Newfoundland. And it's super, super important to me.